Rukunegara. Bahawasanya negara kita Malaysia mendukung cita-cita hendak mencapai perpaduan yang lebih erat kalangan seluruh masyarakatnya, memelihara cara hidup demokratik, mencapai masyarakat yang lebih adil di mana kemakmuran negara akan dapat dinikmati secara adil dan seksama, menjamin satu cara berliberal terhadap tradisi-tradisi kebudayaannya yang kaya dan berbagai corak, membina satu masyarakat progresif yang akan menggunakan sains dan teknologi moden. Maka kami rakyat Malaysia berikrar akan menumpukan seluruh tenaga dan usaha kami untuk mencapai cita-cita tersebut berdasarkan atas prinsip-prinsip yang berikut: kepercayaan kepada Tuhan, kesetiaan kepada raja dan negara, kelurahan perlembagaan, kedaulatan undang-undang, kesopanan dan kesusilaan. Thank you. May I now call upon Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Michael Yeo to give his welcome remarks.
Yang Berhormat Senator Dr. Sri Dilianka, Deputy Minister of National Unity, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dr. Omar Abdul Rahman, Chairman Dialog Rakyat, Yang Berbahagia Dr. Dennison, Chairman of the Malaysia CSO SDG Alliance, Tan Sri, Dr. distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to all of you. Selamat Hari Kebangsaan dan salam sejahtera. On behalf of the joint organizers, TSI, Proham, and Dialog Rakyat, allow me to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to today's roundtable on the Rukunegara. This roundtable aims to remind Malaysians, especially the younger generation, on the Rukunegara as our national philosophy, which has two main parts. One part that states the preamble, stating the objectives of the Rukunegara, and the second part, the principles of the Rukunegara. Often when we recite the principles of the Rukunegara, we forget the underlying objectives, which perhaps is even more important, as that is our national aspiration. It is good that the National Unity Ministry has proposed that Rukunegara will be taught in schools and educational institutions. This proposal, I believe, is timely and much supported. There has also been a call made by many people for the Rukunegara to be included in the Federal Constitution as a preamble. Perhaps due consideration can be given to this suggestion. May I also put forward another suggestion? This may be controversial, but sometimes it is good to take into account and consideration some controversial suggestions that perhaps can be further debated. I propose that the Rukunegara be enacted in Parliament, and that will give greater status and enforcement power to have the Rukunegara as an act of Parliament. It is just a food for thought, but I think it's something that we need to consider and to debate. We need to also, while celebrating the third National Day, refocus on our common values: tolerance, acceptance, moderation, empathy, and respect, which in my mind forms the acronym AMA. So let's strive for an AMA Malaysia, where there is greater tolerance, greater acceptance, more moderation, empathy, and mutual respect. We need to also say no to racism and end racism in all its forms and against all ethnic groups to become a more united nation. So let us together, I hope, embark on a national campaign against racism and extremism and celebrate and uphold our diversity. In conclusion, let me quote our Papa Merdeka, Tunku Abdul Rahman, who said, "Independence can never be achieved without the unity of the various races. Let us therefore work together to strengthen our national unity." And I do hope today's roundtable will enable us to share our views, our thoughts, our insights on promoting unity and harmony and on strengthening the Rukunegara. Sekian, terima kasih.
Thank you, Tan Sri. May I now call upon Tan Sri Omar to say a few words. Thank you.
Has this worked? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Selamat Hari Merdeka dan salam harmoni-mesra. And I'm going to spend a bit of time to talk to you about harmoni-mesra in relation to our topic today. YB Senator Datuk Seri Untitled Yang Besar Tan Sri Michael dan Datuk Malaysia Syria. Ladies and gentlemen, I know behind the mask there are some people I know but do not recognize. And there are also people that I do not know, but I'm happy that you are here with us today. Now we all know that there are two parts to Rukunegara. And Rukunegara, when it was introduced, is only one word. I do not know why now there are two words. And because we split, maybe it's better because if we split that into two words, it reminds us that there are two parts to Rukunegara. Up to now, we all know about the second part. We just recite that just now. But that's all what we have been doing all along. We forget the other part. If the principles is like the pillars, we never know what the pillars were supporting. And what the pillars were supporting, the objectives are the transformational part of Rukunegara, which we forget. And because of that, and Rukunegara is supposed to be the blueprint for our national unity and social harmony. But because we forgot about that, 50 years later, we still cannot take harmony, unity for granted. What happened? So after 50 years, we still have this racism, as Michael raised that. It keeps rearing its ugly heads from time to time, especially when there is a general election. We are more emphasizing on ethnic nationalism rather than a more inclusive civic nationalism, which is for everyone. There is divisive and polarizing rhetoric, religious intolerance, erosion of civility, empathy, and all these things. We used to talk about wasatiyah for the Muslim, and we forgot what wasatiyah is. We never practiced that. Of course, we say we lost the spirit of Muhammad. So after 50 years of Rukunegara, we still are faced with all these things. And objectives 1 and 4, which is achieving a greater unity of our people, ensuring a liberal approach to the country's rich and diverse culture and tradition, a long, long way from being achieved. And we hear calls from time to time from our leaders about maintaining harmony. Our President Agong, on many occasions, has always expressed this. In September 2019, he reminded us to refrain from inciting misunderstanding by raising matters that could undermine and destroy harmony in our country. Therefore, even yesterday, he reminded us about the importance of harmony during his Merdeka celebration address. And our fourth Prime Minister, Dr. Mahathir, said this: the effort to increase unity among the people does not rest on the shoulders of government alone. It is a collective responsibility. So we cannot complain about government, or we cannot complain that politicians are the ones that's giving us problem. We have to think also what we can do as citizens. And this is what I'm going to spend a bit of time here to say what a group of concerned citizens has been doing since 2016 in the context of collective responsibility. We are a group of concerned citizens representing a number of civil societies came together to say, hey, we just cannot continue to blame politicians or anybody else. We have to say what can we do as individuals or as group of individuals to overcome all these problems that we are facing. And this, we want to establish a platform that what can we do as individuals, as I said. And the organizers at that time, Asli, I put that in bracket because Asli was with us. Asli is no longer with us. But there is PICO, Page, Mines, National Building School, G25, INSA, Yayasan Perpaduan Malaysia, and CWO, and of course KSI, which provide the secretarial support to the group. And I thank Darcy Michael for that. And what we did, we came together, we want to promote cohesion and unity, to reject elements of disharmony and divisiveness. We want to establish a unifying principles and to formulate a code of ethical conduct based on ethos and practice of smart partnership. I don't know whether you remember, way back in 1959, I think, we established the Langkawi International Dialogue on Smart Partnership. We introduced to the world the idea of smart partnership, which is based on respect, trust, transparency, tolerance, and accommodation. So we want to build on smart partnership principle to develop a code of ethical conduct and to initiate a citizens' movement for national cohesion and unity. So we convened our first dialogue way back in 2016, and we came up with a code of ethical conduct, which you all have in your folder. I will not deal with all that, but it says here, advocate to promote activity that nurture civic consciousness, civic nationalism rather than sort of racial or rather non-inclusive nationalism, patriotism, national cohesiveness, advocate justice and fairness, resolve contentions and differences through constructive engagement, always seeking for equitable, mutually beneficial outcome, and refrain from action that offend, insult, humiliate, or intimidate others. All these things are actually an extension of what Rukunegara said, kesopanan and kesusilaan. We have been parroting that without translating that into action. That's why we are here today, very, very far away from the objective of national unity and social harmony. So this is the code of ethical conduct that Dialogue Rakyat came up with after the first dialogue. And we have been translating that code of ethical conduct into what we call actionable practices. We have done now about 9 Dialogue Rakyat from then until last year. Our plan for this year is completely disrupted because of the change of government and of course because of the present COVID-19. But what we have done is to translate a code of ethical conduct into what we call actionable practice as for individuals, and we have been dealing with schools, we have been dealing with universities, we have been dealing with what we call neighborhood communities, in other words, resident association and rukun tetangga, and translate that into action what they can do. And we had planned for a lot of activities this year, working with the higher education ministry with blessing in the school, but all that plan has been upset because of the change in government of this year. So just to say here, Dialogue Rakyat has been diligently putting into practice the objectives and the principle of Rukunegara with respect to national unity and social harmony. So we have not only just been reciting the principle, but we unconsciously perhaps have been actually putting that into practice. Now, what is the mission of the Dialogue Rakyat? We say we want to nurture harmoni-mesra generation for Malaysia, working with young people, specifically with schools and with universities, and then promoting harmoni-mesra Malaysian communities. So far, we have only been dealing with neighborhood communities, resident association, and rukun tetangga. And we are looking forward to actually doing more with the business communities. So we are looking for joint conveners with us to bring the harmoni-mesra idea or concept to the business communities, because the business communities can take it up as part of its corporate social responsibility. What is harmoni-mesra? In your folder, we try to explain what is harmoni-mesra. So let me just quickly to say that. Everybody say we have no problem about harmony in Malaysia. We come together when we support our national team in some sport. We come together to eat musang king. So every day we have a harmoni-mesra. Yesterday was a big harmoni-mesra moment. We wave our flag, we take the flag into the bottom of the sea, and we say we have no problem with harmony. Those are harmony moments. And we want more of that. We want more of harmony moments. But we have to build on the top of harmony moments something that is longer term binding. So that is what harmoni-mesra is. And we explained that a little bit more in this document in your folder. So that is what is the mission of Dialogue Rakyat now. Okay. Before the change of government, we were working with the Department of National Unity and Social Harmony. And we understand what we were doing. We presented to them a proposal how we can work together, how can they support us. Now we are hoping that the new ministry will pick this up. So we have presented to the Deputy Minister a proposal that we can work together between the new ministry and our proposal is also in your folder, so I will not spend much more time on that one. And lastly, I want to repeat again. I think we need to bring harmoni-mesra to the business communities. So if anybody here is from the business sector, firstly, you can maybe be a champion with us on this one, because promoting harmoni-mesra can be a corporate social responsibility of the business. So don't forget there are two parts to Rukunegara. The objective is more as important as the principle. And unless we translate the principles into action, then the objective will never be. So 50 years from now, again, we will be saying the same thing, but nothing happens. So let us all remember the objective and try to translate that into actionable practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tan Sri Omar. It's a timely reminder about what Rukunegara, social harmony and national unity is all about. Without further ado, allow me the privilege of welcoming Yang Berhormat Senator Datuk Seri Lianqi, Deputy Minister of National Unity, to present his opening address. Thank you.
Thank you. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Datuk Dr. Michael Yeo, President of PSI, Ms. Caroline, COO PSI, Tan Sri Dr. Omar Abdul Rahman, and Datuk Dr. Dennison Jayasuriya, our distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to say a few words and to help kickstart today's roundtable discussion on the topic of great importance, national unity, and the essence of Rukunegara itself is shaping what we are and how we will be in the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, 50 years ago, the fourth Duli Yang Maha Mulia Sri Paduka Baginda Yang Tuan Agong proclaimed that the country's national aspiration called the Rukunegara and the 5 guiding principles that was designed to ensure perfect and lasting unity in Malaysia. In recognition of the country's unique makeup of people from diverse backgrounds and ethnic groups, the monarchy and the founding fathers of this young nation saw the need to translate the essence of unity, justice, and freedom into the Rukunegara. Post-independence and following an episode of ethnic riots, the designers of the Rukunegara under the leadership of the late Tun Abdul Razak envisioned a Malaysia that has perfect unity among the whole of the society, where democratic way of life is preserved and prosperity of the country can be enjoyed together in a fair and equitable manner. At the same time, providing assurance of a more liberal approach towards the country's rich and varied cultural traditions and cultivating a progressive society that embraces science and technology. In order to achieve this, the government adopted the following guiding principles that remains the bedrock of Malaysia's national unity until today. Kepercayaan kepada Tuhan, kesetiaan kepada raja-raja dan negara, keluhuran perlembagaan, kedaulatan undang-undang, dan kesopanan dan kesusilaan. Ladies and gentlemen, if we examine the Rukunegara in its entirety, it is inclusive, moderate, and includes all aspects of our administration and livelihood. The principles and ideals of the Rukunegara transcend race, religion, background, and gender. Truly a national ideology that provides protection and prosperity to all. The values are not only the responsibility of the administration or the government, but it should also be the guiding principles for all Malaysians in their conduct and interaction with fellow citizens. The modern challenge for Malaysia with the advent of social media is the tendency for misinterpretation, whether it's of the government policies, individual statements, official statements, and political decisions to fit into the assumption of certain groups or their ideologies, leading to the national debates that touch the sensitivities of race, religion, and culture, without much thought on how this nation could be broken apart if we do not return to the shared values that have been so beautifully enshrined in the Rukunegara. The contestation of ideologies based on affiliations and identifying with certain ethnic groups is an ever-present challenges in maintaining harmony and to promote unity. More so in the diverse society of our country. Hence, even as we enjoy the peace and harmony towards today, the fragility of the situation cannot be underestimated. Ladies and gentlemen, in recent years, civil societies and movements have suggested that as the aspiration of the guiding principles of the country, the Rukunegara should have a more significant place in the legal, administration, and educational framework of this country. Personally, I do agree and concur with this. Greater understanding of the intention of the Rukunegara among our younger generation would help shape a more dynamic Malaysia society in the years to come, to create one that would protect communities from extremism, from extremist views and non-constructive ideologies. Thus, the National Unity Ministry is in a strategic collaboration with 3 ministries to instill Rukunegara principles in the early childhood education level for primary and secondary schools, as we know only a united people can build a strong nation. Ladies and gentlemen, as the nation is facing a number of challenges from COVID-19 on the state of economy and the developments in the political landscape, it is more important than ever for the national aspirations of the country to be safeguarded. While Malaysia has handled the COVID-19 crisis well, we are still exposed to so many threats: economic, health, security, and social well-being. How the country deals with these threats will determine how well we survive the challenging time. Therefore, the administration is pulling all stops to fill the gaps in our economy and social welfare system without fear or favor, with the aim of ensuring our country emerges stronger post-COVID-19. The government cannot do it by itself. It requires the cohesive effort of us all as one people to make that happen. The government believes that there are more to the Rukunegara than the 3-month Golden Jubilee celebration launched by the Prime Minister on the 9th of July 2020. In his speech, the Prime Minister outlined the government's commitment in ensuring lasting peace in the country, prosperity for all. He also pointed out that his administration will support all efforts to renew the people's understanding and appreciation of the Rukunegara as a means to bolster unity in this country. The Prime Minister also said that ultimately it was the unity of the Malaysians that helped slow the spread of COVID-19 in this country. It is not enough for us all to recite the Rukunegara. The ideology of it must be a part of the psychology of our people. We must stop identifying how we are different from how we are the same, living under the umbrella of the constitutional monarchy. While we accept our differences, we must also focus on our common goals, our shared vision for the country and for ourselves and our future generation. Ladies and gentlemen, to strengthen national unity, the government is scrutinizing on various methods, and one of it is by framing a unity blueprint. We are currently working on it and it is at the town hall meeting stage, and it will be launched by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riyatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah Sun. The King has expressed his interest in this unity agenda. He has shown his concern about the need to strengthen national unity, to empower the national unity agenda. He has also agreed to launch this unity blueprint and to show his support for the unity blueprint. We are trying to motivate the people to include the strong unity agenda as part of their activities, especially to the youth, because the common use of social media and the instant messaging application have reduced the face-to-face interactions. Besides the Unity Blueprint, the Ministry of National Unity will release a special module to revive the Neighborhood Watch Group, Watch Area KRT program in an effort to attract more community participation, as we believe the module could help strengthen the unity among countries' multiracial community. The efforts to unite the multiracial society should not only depend on the government alone, as the communities should also share the responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, to start the ball rolling for today's discussion, I would like to appeal to all of you to acknowledge that we have come very far to where we are today, a peaceful nation where people from all ethnic groups living, working, and socializing together. We have not had a major racial incident since 1969, and we are determined to keep that record. No doubt, the road has not ended. It is a continuous journey. We may have made mistakes in the past, but what is more important is how we are going to move forward. Perfect unity is not the end game. It is a journey we have to take as responsible citizens. The people of Malaysia comprise multiple communities that continue to hold on tightly to their own ethnic identities, cultural and religious beliefs, and traditional practices. Because of that, we will always be different, but we will always be united as we accept our own uniqueness and that of others. In conclusion, I would like to again thank KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific for inviting me to share my thoughts with you. I look forward to a lively and constructive roundtable discussion. On behalf of the Ministry of National Unity, I welcome KSI to share with the outcome of today's discussion and suggestion on how we could better strengthen national unity and create deeper understanding of the Rukunegara at all levels of society. I would like to end with empat rangkap pantun. Kalau hendak tahu indahnya jati, buatlah perahu, gunakanlah pahat. Rukunegara bersama-sama kita hayati. Nilai kita semak, semangat kita berkuat. Sekian, terima kasih.
Thank you, Yang Berhormat. As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present a small token to YB for his presence here today. Without further ado, let me introduce the moderator for this panel discussion, Professor Dato' Dr. Denison Jayasuriya is here. And for the members of the panel, allow me to introduce Dato' Halimah Ahmad Said. And then we have Ms. Fei Lim over the other corner there. And Mr. Dufitri Johar, Dr. Koo, as well as Amelia Tan and Ms. Debbie Cho from Project 57. Prof. Denison, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carol, and thank you to Tan Sri Michael for this invitation, and welcome to all, especially to YB Senator who spoke just now, as well as Tan Sri Dr. Omar. It's a very interesting discussion, and we are sitting in a conversational style. I know some of us are by the table and others are at the back, but I think when there is opportunity to speak, there would be a chance for you to make an intervention or a comment. I thought the recital just now of the Rukunegara and the different views highlighted in the opening is quite significant, because if you take the 5 ambitious goals or targets that we are called to review today, because while we can talk about national unity in general, we want to apply it specifically to the principles of the Rukunegara and see how over the years, by different administrations of government, to what extent did they give emphasis or focus to it. So if we look at the 5 ambitious points, it's quite significant that it quite parallels with the Vision 2020 sort of statement. Perfect unity. Perfect unity sounds like perfect love, but unity in that sense. Democratic way of life, second. Third, just society, shared prosperity in the context of fairness and equity, equitable. Liberal approach. The word liberal is such a bad word in Malaysian society that people have sought in different ways to discredit it, but it's part of the Rukunegara in English. Progressive society, science and technology, and the 5 principles. I heard the opening comments by the 3 VIPs to the occasion. But as social researchers, me as a sociologist working on the ground, we all know that very often the problem of national unity is not at the grassroots. This is something you can agree or disagree. I don't see it. I was in Pendang with what I would call Pendang parliamentary constituency with conservative political people or ethnic communities and so forth. I was also in Kelantan with grassroots communities, and I found that what I thought would be very conservative and difficult to adjust were very loving people who hosted us exceptionally, especially those who took us to their dusun durian and things like that. But it's worth discussing afterwards and see whether the panelists, young or more senior panelists, would pick it up. In my research, and I think Michael was also on the panel, NUCC panel, we noted that the real culprits were politicians. And so far, no one's talking about belling the cat, in this context. That the real people who need to be cautioned and censored, whether in Dewan or out, are actually politicians. And while we can focus on school kids and so forth, it's really a call whether we would have peer review, peer cautioning, would Parliament enact something in what the parliamentarians speak in the Dewan and outside, and whether government would be serious of an NUCC recommendation on mediation as a principle that comes out from the Rukunegara. You know what is so exciting today? It's unbelievable that the panel of discussants, 5 are women and only 1 man, which is coming as a surprise because in the morning I was in a conference where all the speakers, including moderators, were only men. And this is very encouraging. I think you must give a hand to, I don't know whether it was Carol or Michael, because to have 5 women and 1 man, he's there in the process. And it also intergenerational, and this is very significant, to have very strong young voices on the note and more senior people who spoke before as well. So the panelists, I won't take more time, but I think we want to get to the bottom of this. Who has been downplaying Rukunegara in the past? Why has it not been like the Panchat Sila of Indonesia? Why? Who's been at it? Who's trying to revive it? what are the challenges and hurdles in all the principles that you see. We are most divided on our belief in God, our understanding of the monarchy, the supremacy of the constitution is being challenged, the rule of law or rule by law, courtesy and morality are concerns. Let me welcome our panelists, Dato Halima, who is well known in this field and the past president of the Association of Voices of Peace, Conscience and Reason. I hope politicians would set up such a party as well. So over to you, Dato, for your words. I think each panelist is given only 8 minutes and someone would ring the bell so we can keep to time as well. Would there be a hands-free mic? Yes. Over to you, Dato.
Thank you, Prof. Jensen. And thank you, Kasi, and the organizing committee for inviting me. Actually, I didn't know that I was supposed to speak today. So this is impromptu. I'm at once, and I'm glad you brought this point up about the politicians being the culprits in all of this, because I think as far as people on the ground is concerned, we are harmonious. We are a harmonious society. I'm very optimistic about this, all right? That Malaysia, since independence, the people have got along with one another, whether it is through tolerance, accommodation, understanding, we've got along. Of course, people have quoted education, the education system, as being another culprit, an institutional culprit, because the vernacular schools, the breakdown or the breaking up of the education system into the Sekolah Kebangsaan, Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Cina, Sekolah Jenis Kebangsaan Tamil, and the Sekolah Agama. This is not a good development as far as unity is concerned. But my point has always been that if you call for a dissolution of vernacular education, there's going to be a revolution. I believe so. Not only Dongzong, but many of the new bodies that have come up will lead a revolution. So let it remain that as it is embodied in the Constitution. The vernacular education is actually protected by our Constitution. Now, to go back to my place in this whole, panel discussion, I'm at once, as I said just now, pessimistic, optimistic first of all, and pessimistic. Pessimistic because, there's no one big strategy about unity, yeah? Because the Ministry of Unity or the unity movement in the country has been going up and down since the 1970s. When in 1972, it was the Ministry of Unity, and then it became a department, and then it became an agency, and now we're back to being a ministry. So there has been no big support for this movement as a national movement in the country. So it's high time that the present Minister of Unity and the Deputy Minister who is here, you lead the way forward to create a national movement of unity through public campaigns, through programs, through strategies and so on. This is my call. And I'm kind of I have a leg in the Ministry of Unity because I'm a member of the team Ahli Pemikir, which met just last week. Our second meeting was last week, and we're advising the minister on strategies that she should take. So I feel that I'm betraying, or rather, I'm contributing to this discourse in a very positive way, because things are being done at the ministry. We're calling for all kinds of strategies and so on. The reformulation of Rukunegara Act, Tan Sri Omar, they're going to empower Rukunegara a little bit more, and maybe residents' associations should fall into this category. Because they are a very active group, residents' associations, but no locus standi. They're just a loose group of people attending gatherings and so on. So, we're doing a lot, yeah? And one of the strategies is to go back to the formulators of Rukunegara, because many things have been misunderstood along the way. Now, just 2 days ago, I interviewed Dr. Abu Salim, the chairman of the drafting committee, and I'm going to interview Tan Sri Kamarul Arifin on Thursday and Tun Salih Abbas next week. So they were the original formulators, and they wonder why the word has become 2 words. Because it was gazetted as Rukunegara, one word, just as Pancasila is a one word in Indonesia. But now it's like Rukunegara, macam Rukun Islam. Like 5 principles, that's why people are reciting it without really understanding what it means. Just as in Rukun Islam, in Islam, we have the Rukun Islam Lima Perkara, and people recite it, and then they don't practice the actual tenets of the religion. So Rukunegara is becoming like that. Children recite it, communities recite it, and then they don't live it. But I agree with Tan Sri Omar, because I happen to be in Tan Sri Omar's group as well. We have revived it, given it a new impetus. We're calling it harmoni-mesra, because unity, perfect unity, is not achievable. It's an ideal. We shall work towards that. But harmoni-mesra is what you can do on the ground. We are harmonious here. We can be harmonious in school, in the business community, and we are harmonious in the business community. So I'm very optimistic, but the strategies must be right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dato, for those pointers vis-a-vis harmoni-mesra and highlighting the theme. Let me pass on to Ms. Fei Lim, co-founder of the Rojak project. Fei, over to you.
Yes. Thank you very much to all our leaders, organizers, and everybody around here, aunties, uncles, brothers, and sisters. If we go through the 5 principles of Rukunegara, sure, you can allow us to memorize it when we were young in school. But let's give an example. You embed it, let's say it was embedded in our minds. How many actually really understand it? Keluhuran perlembagaan. Let's give an example. How many actually people know what it means? So if we don't know what that is, how can we actually really uphold something that we don't really know? But I'm going to share with you from a different perspective that maybe it's not about that. If we were to look at the Rukunegara, if you want to change, add or take away the Rukunegara, it's not going to make a lot of changes. Because to me, that's not the root problem. The major root problem that we are facing actually is ignorance. It's not that. Let me break it down and give an example of what we're trying to say. If we look at an example for, let's say, our elder generation, for those who are older than us, who played a significant part in our generation, our role. My grandparents shared with us about what happened during the war, during the Japanese war. They shared about the cruelty, how cruel the Japanese did, with graphic information, but not once did I ever hear them say, hate them. Not once. And because of that, if I were to see a fellow Japanese or with their families walking past by me, I do not even have a single harbor of hate. That is something very powerful. So the point is that sometimes if we were to impart certain things like negative hatred towards the younger, that's something that we learn as well. So this is something that I know, this is the second part that I'm going to share, that I know not many people want to break free from. Because this is a system that tells us from young, the way, through our schooling system, that our identity has always been Malay, Chinese, Indian, and lain-lain. You see, that is one of the major leading factors that prevents a truly unified Malaysia. To me, if you name 3 races, we have to name them all, including those who are Rojak. I'm a fellow Chinese mixed Siamese, Noya. I'm here with Priscilla, also from Rojak Project. She's a fellow Penan from Sarawak. Here, I have my brother Jajit, who's a Punjabi. You see, the system had ingrained in us. In all honesty, when I was young, this is what it really taught us. It's basically saying that I'm better than you, I am superior than you, and I am more than you. Okay? And there's nothing wrong to be proud of your origin. But subconsciously, it tells us that there's no point looking at other races because there are others. So the root comes back to ignorance. In my journey, I had to go through this process of breaking this ignorance when I traveled around Malaysia. And what I did and found out was, after traveling around Malaysia, I can conclude the fact that Malaysia means, yes, it means all of us together. But the question I had to ask myself during that journey was, what is lain-lain? Who are the lain-lain and how many are out there? Last year, the Rojak Project had to exhibit a list of those who were classified as non-lain-lain. There were more than 250 ethnic and sub-ethnic groups. And we are very thankful that media played a part to expose that list, to give some voice to our unheard Malaysians. Now, leading to a possible solution. I think, starting from education, maybe let's have a complementary syllabus within the education system. What if we include a fun syllabus that allows them to meet and greet people of different ethnicities as part of their homework? Interviews, essays, mini documentaries, reaching out to your neighbors. Let there be a simple structure that allows us to ask about someone else's story. Auntie, what is this? Uncle, what is that? Because basically that's what Rojak Project did. We didn't know anything about our country, and so therefore we travel all around asking, what is this? What is that? Find out what is maybe the possibly adat, pantang, language, music, and maybe ask them, what do you like about the other culture? The culture that you never heard of. This could be one way to get to know and learn from our fellow Malaysians better while bridging the Malaysian gap. Bridging the Malaysian gap. This is something that Rojak Project has always been trying to experiment through different creative ways to bridge the gap. But now let's talk about all of us. What about all of us? And let's be real, not every Malaysian has the money to travel all around Malaysia to discover all our diverse brothers and sisters, all the different cultures, right? So here's what we believe, since someone brought up about science and technology. I like the idea of technology. Maybe there could be a way to even bring it further to bridge us together. If we have an understanding, maybe it's simplified version of understanding 2-3 minutes. What is what? For example, what is a tatana? What is a kelabit? Has anybody in this room have met a kelabit? Anyone can raise their hands? You have met a kelabit? Awesome. Anyone has heard of tatana, orang tatana? No? Just so you know, they are our brothers too. They are our family. Just as we can name Chinese, Indian, Malays, they have their own names as well, by the way, guys. So, if we had this simple version for this whole nation, where we all have that access to understand what is what, and have activities to grow, to get one, grow, to learn from one another, and plus maybe have it on media and home websites, having that access, free access. We need to, we need that awareness and engagement if we want to talk about togetherness, alright? With all that information, it will allow Malaysia to realize the uniqueness of our diversity to a whole new level, alright? And this can also allow us to understand and hold the true meaning and interactions behind the Rukunegara.
Thank you very much, Faye, and maybe your colleagues could, during discussion time, raise some thoughts later. Very good points towards this root cause of ignorance. Is it really ignorance or deliberate denial? Because Tan Sri Omar earlier raised about ethnic nationalism, which is a narrative that is portrayed as opposed to multiple identities. So I think it's a contestation, but it's very nice to hear your refreshing project, and hopefully we can get more info. Now over to Justri Johan, the president of the Malaysian Youth Council, Majlis Belia Malaysia, the biggest youth body in the country, and they are doing some very good work among youths. Over to you, Justri.
Thank you, Dato'. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon. Thank you for having me from Malaysian Youth Council. And I would like to share some of my experience and thought on this important topic. Last 2 weeks, we did celebrate our National Youth Day on 15th of August with our Prime Minister, and during my speech, I emphasized that NPM as the National Youth Council will continuously strive to fight for the fundamental principle like Rukunegara, Constitution, and of course, we will have Warisan Kemakmuran Bersama that bind us. And also from the youth development perspective, we have our national youth policy, whereby in our national youth policy we have at least 4 main pillars that constitute the importance of our national youth policy to be wrapped together with our constitution, Rukunegara, and Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama. Whereby in this very important national youth policy, I think most of our young people, they didn't read this important policy, but it is really important for us, especially for the main stakeholders like us, Malaysian Youth Council from NGO perspective and Ministry of Youth and Sport from government perspective. So in this kind of national youth policy, we fortunate to have this kind of policy, whereby Canada didn't have, Australia also didn't have this kind of policy. In this national youth policy, precisely mentioned that one of the important pillars in this national youth policy is to uphold the importance of Constitution and Rukunegara. So the main stakeholders, especially Ministry of Youth and Sport and Malaysian Youth Council and other main stakeholders, will guide their planning, their practice in implementing the youth program must be based on Rukunegara and Constitution. But our main challenge is among our young people, especially we are dealing with the Z generation, those who were born after 1995. They have their own specific character that the main stakeholder like us has to tackle them, have to understand them first on how to educate them on the importance of Rukunegara as the main source of unity, of course, as the main of stability, as mentioned by our Deputy Minister, as the main source of protection and prosperity. So that is our main challenge on how to comprehend, understand the character of Z generation, in order for us to find the finest way or the easiest way to educate them on the importance of Rukunegara. You know that Rukunegara is a very, very formal statement, but our challenge on how to understand them and find the easiest way to educate them on this kind of important principle. Of course, from Malaysia Youth Council perspective, we have to study them first. The main character, their main feature of the Z generation, because they are very tech savvy, so they are used to believe with gadget, with Twitter, tablet, and so on. So we have to find the easiest way to approach them. And one of our easiest way to approach them by having to mingle around them to tackle the hobby and the interest of the young and the Z generation. I think last week we did organize e-sport tournament, and we tried to utilize this kind of online platform to educate and to try to educate Rukunegara informally through this kind of platform e-sport. I think it's very, very efficient to approach our young people, especially the Z generation, through this kind of platform. So we have to think other easiest platform to approach the Z generation, and one of them is e-sport platform. Over there we can see all the Chinese, Indian, or the Malay, Sabah and Sarawak. They are very familiar and they are used to participate in this kind of e-sport platform. So, brothers and sisters, our main challenge is to find the easiest platform to approach the Z generation. And apart from the national youth policy and apart from the main challenge that we have to face in order to understand the Z generation, we are very fortunate. So we have Malaysian Youth Council as even though it is the conservative platform, it's not like we have Project Roda and other non-conservative youth organization or youth movement. But we are very fortunate to have this platform. Since its inception in 1948, we managed to produce a multi-ethnic leader, whether they are in government right now or in opposition. So we managed to produce multi-ethnic leaders. This is a melting pot for our youth, ranging from whether they are Malay, they are Chinese. We have at least in our umbrella, we have at least 8 major Chinese youth organizations. For example, we have GBB, Young Movement of Malaysia. They are Chinese-based youth organizations. So we managed to, even though we are adopting model of integration rather than assimilation, but at least we have a national youth platform to give a chance for them to mingle around, to co-organize program together, and alhamdulillah we managed to bring them on board. Let's say for example last year we managed to organize interfaith workshop. We managed to bring Persatuan Malaysia, Persatuan Malaysia, Persatuan Malaysia, even Sabah and Sarawak under our umbrella. We managed to bring them to discuss together on the importance of Rukunegara, and we did focus on the first pillars of the Rukunegara, kepercayaan kepada Tuhan. So we managed to understand from their perspective, from Persatuan Malaysia perspective, from Persatuan Malaysia India Youth Council perspective, and we managed to understand from the perspective of Majlis Belia State Youth Council and so on. So I think, as mentioned by Dato' Omar just now, our second challenge is to have actionable practices. So we have to utilize this important platform. In our leadership, we have at least 30 leaders under Malaysian Youth Council, ranging from they are Chinese, Indian, Malay, and they are coming from Sabah and Sarawak even. And most recently, we tried to establish 2 important youth movement in order to ensure that MPM will always inclusive in terms of dealing with our young people. So we are in the process of establishing Majlis Belia OKU to ensure that OKU also will take care of them. And we have Majlis Belia on ASMI even. They are very active, and we support them, and we try to prioritize the issues coming from their part. So we always highlight the issues of our Belia on ASMI in all our national platform, because we are being invited, for example, in National Youth Consultative Council, checked by our Minister of Youth and Sport. We are being included in Jawatan Kuasa Cabinet Pembangunan Beliau, comprising of 12 ministry. So we have that kind of platform. So last but not least, we have so many programs, but we try to play our vital role in promoting Rukunegara, and wherever we have a chance to speak on this kind of topic, we always try to make Rukunegara important in the eyes of our young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jasputri. I think the role of MBM is significant in actionable practices as well as finding the right platform. Maybe when we have the Q&A time, you can explain, because I didn't see MBM as a conservative platform. So
I mean,
maybe
those who are, like to be in meeting setting, preparing minutes, involved
in
in
that
AGM,
sense.
yeah, because most of the young people they didn't like this, the summit report or anything that too formal in terms of in organizational wise. Yeah.
I thought conservative politically or religiously or value-based. So I thought young people were always very progressive, like Roja, is it? Okay, let's move on. We have Dr. Koo Ing Wee, who is an academic at University Malaya, but she is also Secretary General of ProArm, the Society on the Promotion of Human Rights, which is a co-organizer with Dialogue Rakyat KSI for this program. Over to you.
Thank you, Dato'. Good afternoon to everybody. For this panel session, I would just like to make 5 points. Basically, it comprises of my observations, maybe some challenges that I would like to highlight, and also some of my analysis about the Rukunegara. So my very first point is about the debate on the national unity. I think we have been debating about this for 6 decades since the independence day until today, and it's never ending. And recently, just like Dr. Halima just now mentioned about the vernacular school, I'm a product of a vernacular school myself, and I totally understand what's the dilemma within the vernacular schools and so forth. But I think Dr. Halima also pointed out a very correct point and accurate point as a person who is a product of the vernacular, is that the structural issues and the institutional issues that within the system itself, the education itself. Because I think if we look at Malaysia and as in a broader perspective, we are always proud with our multiracial diversities, our ability to speak various languages. So I do not think we should make vernacular schools, UEC and so forth, politically and make it as an obstacle that to say that it is the obstacle for the national unity. I think that is really inaccurate, because if we look at Malaysians' policies and also, for example, the United Nations statements, almost all of our documents always start with our pride, multiracial, diversities and so forth. We are so proud of that, and why should we make all these differences as the excuse that it is the hindrances of the national unity? That's my very first point. And also I would like to add that this is basically suggestions to the politicians. I think very often when we see the changes of the administration sometimes, or in the prime ministership, we tend to see some new slogans. In the past, we have One Malaysia, we have Bangsa Malaysia, and so forth. I do not think we need any slogans. I think our historical foundation with the federal constitutions, with our Rukunegara, is beautifully drafted, and that is enough, because if we read the whole text, everything is drafted so beautifully. What we need is really just to feel what was inside the document itself. I do not think there's any need for any new slogan for this country, including the debates about why should we divide Rukunegara as 2 words, because that is historically founded and we should just stick with it, and that's how we can explain to our younger generation later that is how our history is being drafted and so forth. And my second point, as an academic myself, I would like to bring up the concern about the civic education. And civic education has been on and off for years and years. Sometimes it's there, and sometimes the administration thinks that we do not need that, and then we take it off. But if we look at the history ourselves, when we have the Rukunegara in 1970, in 1972, we introduced the civic education. So we actually have civic education back then, and the ideology behind it was that we should teach the kids about Rukunegara, we should teach them about Federal Constitution, everything is already there. But unfortunately, over times, that subject was not there, and now during the Pakatan time, it was back there. But of course, when we introduce all these subjects, and now the current government thinks that we should introduce back, and we have Rukunegara educations. But I think we should also listen to the concern of the teachers themselves, because if you look at the review of the civic education, what happened back then was that everything is there perfectly, but it's the implementation. For example, civic education is a subject that the kids do not go for exam. And we know our problem with the system is that teachers will teach when the kids are able to score an A and so forth. That's our systems. We haven't been able to do away with that kind of mentality. So when it is a subject that we do not actually need to sit for exam, there's very limited appreciation to that particular subject. I think we should really relook into that, how to make it as equal as the other subjects as well. Because I really see there's no point of introducing something, but the implementation remains as problems. Because later we will hear from the teachers who say that there are the work burdens and so forth. So in the end, it's go back to the square one, because we have really tested this for too many times. And my third point is about Pancasila. Just now, Dr. Vanessa mentioned briefly about the Pancasila in Indonesia. Although the point of having the Pancasila is, not the same like when we had the racial riot, but if we look at Pancasila itself, it's very similar to our Rukunegara. And basically in Pancasila, the 5 principles are belief in the one and only God, a just and civilized society, united as a nation, to be guided by consensus and social justice for all. This is precisely why just now when we recite Rukunegara together, I think what is really missing is that we remember during the assembly when we need to recite Rukunegara, we started, of course, there will be one person who will actually read the whole text, but that is only that person who will read the whole text. The other children, they do not read the whole text. They only start with Maka Kami, Rakyat Malaysia, right? But the problem lies in exactly how we are doing it, because if we really read the whole text just now, we have all the words democratic, way of life, just society, liberal approach in how you're appreciating the religious harmonies and building a progressive society that emphasize on the science and modern technology. So while now we keep talking about technology, but back then they are already talking about technology. So it's really nothing new. They have been really progressive. So I think that whole text should be there, because I think you might realize that just now when we read the whole text, we might be able to actually feel what is our 5 principles in a more holistic way, rather than separate it to only the kepercayaan kepada Tuhan and so forth. I think that shouldn't be separated. So in terms of the, I will talk a little bit about the Pancasila challenges later, because I think they also face challenges. It's not that they are also perfect to be practiced in the society as well. And my 4th point is, I would like to stress that I think Rukunegara should be treated as a way of life, based on what I have mentioned just now, that it should be interpreted in the whole text. And Dr. Dennison mentioned about the words of liberal. Liberal seems to be a word that people do not like it. And people always make it liberal versus Islam kind of approach, but the word is already there. So that is precisely why it is very important to read Rukunegara as a whole. And that brings to my 5th point, my final point is that I think we must interpret Rukunegara from various perspectives. And when we read about the text on the just society, I think that shows us that that is also the concern of the economic disparity. So when we talk about Rukunegara, it's not just about politically, socially, but economically. Is the contents is already there. So those are the things I would like to highlight. And in conclusions, I think to bring in the challenges of the Pancasila, in fact, June 1st is officially a national holiday. It was actually to commemorate the birth of Pancasila after Jokowi signed a presidential decree in 2016. So that shows us that the Pancasila has also challenges with globalizations, technologies, social medias, and so forth. Yeah, I think that can be one of the reasons brings to Jokowi to actually declare June 1st as a national holiday. I'm not suggesting that we should have Rukunegara holiday, but maybe we should have, because similarly with the ASEAN Day, people also say that we should have an ASEAN Day to be able to appreciate the ASEAN spirit. So I think today the Rukunegara has become more relevant, and I will really hope to see one day we are all be able to see the beauty behind the Rukunegara itself as what it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ingui. I think moving from just another set of slogans or sloganism, which is often popular in politics, but to try and live out the principles is a theme that was highlighted. Can I pass the time to Emilia Tan, Chairman? You're not the chair.
I'm not. I'm here
Okay, from the Young Corporate Malaysians. Okay, over to you, Emilia.
Thank you, Dato. Good afternoon, everyone. So my speech is going to be quite short because I didn't really have much time to prepare for this. But here goes. The Rukunegara was formed in 1970 to be the backbone of unity among our multicultural and multiracial population. This morning, I ran a quick poll on my Instagram account to just ask whether we've lived up to the principles of the Rukunegara. An overwhelming percentage of respondents actually said no, and now how do we rectify this? And that's why we're here today. A 2019 study by Ipsos Malaysia found that 67% of Malaysians are concerned about national unity and safety, especially on the possibility of violent conflicts involving ethnic or minority groups. This fear has increased by 12% from the previous year. In my opinion, the most important task at hand is to inculcate the younger generation with the right ethics and encourage them to be critical thinkers. Intolerance stems from ignorance and fear, and this is cultivated from an early age. We need to teach the younger generation about tolerance, human rights, and other ways of life. Teach them about the importance of diversity and inclusivity at all areas. They should be encouraged to be open-minded and curious, both at home as well as in school. I remember that in school, we were forced to memorize the principles of the Rukunegara, and we were also tested on it during our exams. I'm sure we can all speak from experience that the more you force kids to do something, the more they will reject the idea of it. That's why we need to humanize the principles and create compelling stories on the Rukunegara. We should look at the Rukunegara to be a guiding principle for humanity and not be used as racial or political propaganda. It shouldn't just be lines that can be regurgitated and not fully understood. We are also in a very privileged position where technological advancements and accessibility have allowed us to consume media at an exponential rate. Digital and social media is the most common denominator among people at various levels of society today. Through creative expression and social media, we can craft stories about each objective and principle of the Rukunegara and the values that each line carry. Think about the wire ads that we see every year, which are always tugging on our heartstrings, while promoting unity and patriotism. It piques the interest of all ages. This is a prime example of how national unity can be achieved through creative ways. That being said, we saw humanity at its best during the pandemic, helping and caring about each other regardless of race or religion. There should be more depth to the things we are trying to ingrain into future generations when it comes to patriotism. It should go back to the foundations of what makes Malaysia the unique country it is, which is our multicultural people. When a non-Malaysian asks us about Malaysia, we usually say that we're proud of our multicultural community as well as our food because we have so many different choices out there. The diversity of our community also brings with it many festivities and public holidays which we all enjoy. Adding to our nation's uniqueness, we need to leverage this and have this sense of national unity and also create stories to sort of capture that. On a personal note, as a young Malaysian, I, along with many of my peers across all races, decided to return to our home after completing our stints abroad. And a huge reason why many of us returned is because we believe in the future of our nation. We want to actively contribute towards the becoming of Malaysia and to tell everyone that national unity exists. We just need to convey the right story to propagate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilia. I think the return back is a key theme in a period where many young people might not want to and to see the future in this land. But maybe the secret is you like all our char kway teow and hawker
I
food
love char kway teow.
and all that. But you can also get it elsewhere now. But thank you for the reflections, noting the best in Malaysians emerged in the kind of response to the COVID situation. And I think communities moved across and of course COVID went across. It didn't look at color or your ethnic or religious background. It hit all human beings and all of us were vulnerable. Can I pass the time to Debbie from Project 57 to share your reflections? Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Country Michael, for having me here today, and the distinguished guests. I really appreciate this invitation because I think it's ever more critical for us to address this issue against the background of all the rising tensions and also polarization. Perhaps I could give a brief introduction to Project 57, which will then provide a bit of context to the reflections that I've made. I'm one of the founding team members of Project 57, together with Syed Sadiq Alvar and Colin Sweet. And we come from a background of entrepreneurs. And I myself was a corporate lawyer for close to 20 years before undertaking this project. And Project 57 was formed as a social enterprise on 31st August 2015, which makes it that we just celebrated our 5th anniversary yesterday. And we were formed as a movement of hope during one of the nation's darkest hours. The emphasis then and still being our youths, and what we really would like to do is to inspire in them values of acceptance, unity, diversity, and progressiveness as expounded in our constitution and also Rukunegara. So what have we done so far in the last 5 years? We've worked with a lot of youths on dialogues, workshops, presentations, speaking and sharing. But we've also tried to undertake campaigns which are designed, hopefully, to be engaging and attractive to youths from all backgrounds, such as the Unity Ride, which we did in 2017. Faye was also part of that, where as Malaysians, we cycled around Malaysia, including East Malaysia, with pit stops in every state where we carried out unity workshops, themed workshops and dialogues with universities and schools, and also unity-themed community events. And since 2018, in conjunction with Merdeka and Hari Malaysia, we have been encouraging Malaysians to join us in wearing the unity ribbon. Thank you, Tan Sri, for wearing that unity ribbon, which is inspired by our Jalur Gemilang over our hearts as a symbol of love for Malaysia, unity, and also hope for a better future. So each ribbon comes with a card, which we shout out, Maka Kami Rakyat Malaysia, in line with the Rukunegara, and also a quote by Tunku Abdul Rahman, whom we draw inspiration from, that our future depends on how well many different kinds of people live and work well together. With really been encouraged by the widespread acceptance of our movement, with 260,000 Malaysians coming together to wear the unity ribbon, and very humbled to also be featured in media, and just so encouraged by the fact that so many youths really have also come on board to join us. We are part of the pioneer batch of social enterprises, which received national accreditation from the Ministry of Entrepreneurial Development, and in July this year we also received tax exemption status from the Ministry of Finance. So some of our findings, or rather I put together some of these findings which I thought resonated. I think first and foremost is that it's so encouraging to know that so many Malaysians actually truly love our country. I mean, just people from different political divides, wearing the ribbon and expounding their love for Malaysia and wanting a better future for Malaysia. And I truly feel that if we can go above and beyond our differences and also celebrate our similarities and pull together by that love for Malaysia, right? And focusing on the aspirations of our Rukunegara. I mean, what a wonderful aspiration to have been written all those years ago. And I memorized it in school all those years ago as just a memory thing. But now that I am, with Project 57, I get to really experience a journey of this togetherness and bonding with so many different Malaysians from different backgrounds. The other thing is that I feel that we really need to have dialogue and space for conversation to take place, especially amongst the youths. Difficult conversations, not just the niceties of what unity is or should be, but really to have that space where youths of different backgrounds can come together, ask questions. And we need to include history, culture, and philosophy, right? We've forgotten all that. We recently organized a dialogue with the Center of Civilizational Dialogue at UM, where Edin Koo, Professor Koo Kim San, also one of the drafters of the Rukunegara, he was a panelist, and he made it a point that in his father's day, there would be hundreds of students in the history class, but now not even 50 want to sign up. So if there is no space and no interest in history, culture, and philosophy, then we will lose sight of our roots. The third thing is that I do agree with some of the panelists here who have said that we need to do more actionable practices and actionable action with the youth, because I feel we need to translate the awareness in our head. Like, we can learn the Rukunegara, but how does it translate to our hearts, or how does it translate to the hearts of the youth? As the saying goes, tak kenal maka tak cinta, as what Faye was also saying. If there is no opportunity for youths to come together and even get to know one another or have that understanding, then what is there to speak of unity? A case in point was a unity workshop that we did in Pahang, and students from different schools, we got them together. 3 sekolah kebangsaan, 1 China, right, and Chempaka International School kids came, and we brought our Orang Asli youths. We also work with Orang Asli youths. And I went in there thinking, yeah, I'm going to do this conversation starter and everything's going to be fine. And then no one could speak to each other. I mean, like, language was a barrier, right, to start with. And so I had to change the conversation starter and just get them to try to ask each other, find 2 things in common, something as simple as that. But the beauty of it is that youths are quite adaptable, right? And so they warmed up to each other. And when they warmed up to each other, and they went up front after that and they shared, I felt, okay, right, there is hope, right? Just after half a day, they warmed up to each other. So we've done a lot of workshops, and another one that I wanted to note was the workshop that we did in Sekolah Menengah Science Dungun, right? Like most of you have said, that at the level of the grassroots, there is no problem. And these youths welcomed us, with gombang and everything. Their principal said, hey, I left it to them to do what they wanted, in receiving you guys. And they wanted to even do the unity workshop, some of the groups, even in English. I went there thinking, oh, they're only going to be, conversing in Malay, but they were so open, right? And that kind of openness from the youths, that really gives me hope. Okay, so just the last 2 points. So with the opportunity, if we get the youths to work together, then they can also build relationships, right? And with relationships, there can then be reconciliation and building of bridges. And I truly believe that we need to start with the process of reconciliation as well amongst the different races. And I mean, it starts with even me as a Chinese person, asking for forgiveness perhaps, right? For the labels that I have placed on people of other races. Okay, my last 2 points is, I have 2 minutes, right? Yeah. I really feel that we need to take advantage of the modern tools of this world, okay? Which is also where most of the youth can be found. I mean, there is so much hate speech and negative narratives which incite. And so it is important for youthful, moderate, positive voices to reclaim that internet and digital space and to redirect the conversation away from all the misinformation, insults, and fears. And I agree with what YB T said earlier on, that yes, we need to speak up in the digital realm, and more so young men and women. I mean, recently, Parliament Digital by Undi 18 was so refreshing because, thousands of youths came to sign up for only 222 spots, and they gave their views, right, on how they felt about the future of Malaysia and the impact on them. We need to also reach out to youths who are beyond the cities. Like, for example, here, this is a dialogue between people who are already converted to the cause. But we need to get out there, right, to the grassroots with this message of moderation. And I believe that the digital space is the way forward. The challenge, of course, like what Jufitri said, is to come up with messages and narratives which are best suited to win youth. And lastly, I believe that it is the responsibility of every person to strive to act out and expound the principles. Negara ku tanggungjawab, right? And I really would like to get more and more private partnerships, with corporates to come alongside on this journey, right? We need to do this together, right? Collectively, as the rakyat from all different levels of society. Yes. Thank you so much. I hope I'm within time.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. I think you are. Thank you for those words reflecting on various points that you highlighted, and I think what Project 57 has been doing is very innovative. Now, we are actually on time, Michael, 5 minutes to 4, which is opening up of the discussion time. Let me just draw some themes that emerged and then see whether we can unpack it or discuss it further. First is this intergenerational conversation that we have had today in the panel itself. And actually, the theme of optimism is coming from the most senior person, I would say, Dato' Aliman, and at the same time, from Emilia, who had this positive vibe to return back after overseas studies. So young people actually bring a lot of freshness to the discussion, and I think it's important to keep the space, and maybe KSI can continue to do that in an organized way of bringing in new voices into it. Second, I think what has emerged is recognizing the rich diversity and heritage. I think we heard from Faye that they found more than 250 sub-ethnic groups in their search. And how then do we break this dominant ethnic narrative and mold in a way that appreciation of diversity. So we would all think all Malays are one, which is the political narrative, until you get to Kelantan or to Kedah or to Negeri Sembilan or to Johor, and they actually have so many different ways, like if you're in Kedah, the Bahasa that they are speaking or Kelantan is quite difficult for someone from Selangor to understand. So I think the rich heritage is a point that came up and that comes up in the theme. Thirdly, addressing root causes that prevent this real appreciation of Rukunegara. Fourth, moving beyond recital or just the sloganism and symbol to living out. That means true understanding of the terms, the concepts, internalizing the principles. The fourth point in this area. The fifth, which I think many of the panelists highlighted, education, youth creative ways, constitutional literacy, appreciating history and culture and so forth, understanding that. And finally, capturing the digital space, changing the narrative, and young people can. And I think, someone who uses Facebook quite often, and we are all the time WhatsApping people. This year, I thought the digital was highly utilized by all age groups to have the spirit of Merdeka. I myself took a photo by the flag and posted it as my lead, and I saw so many people posting that or changing their Facebook or Instagram, and then the little dramas and action or songs that were being posted. I thought this year was much more. So I was wondering why. It's possible because government might not have done much this year because of COVID and so forth. So the digitalization and public space actually increased. So that's it from me. Some pointers and you want to pick it up. Now, before today, two people, one person spoke to me over the phone and another, his secretary, texted me. And I thought it might be nice to give these two senior people an opportunity to speak. One is, we are privileged that Tan Sri Marimoto is here. I've worked in the past very closely with him, outstanding educational sociologist, academician, turned politician, and I'll pass to Tan Sri if you want to say a few words. I'm not sure whether the time bell goes on, but briefly, Tan Sri, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thank you very much, Dr. Chairman, and also thank you to Tan Sri Markelio, whom I know for a long time. And we were together in Market, and also Tan Sri Uma, and all the other distinguished guests or speakers. The Rukunegara, the last week or so, has come into flourish. That is, everybody is talking about Rukunegara. I mean, all the media is talking and everybody, even the young people talk about Rukunegara. But what is happening in the country with negative statements and so on and so forth, it affects the mental health of the people, not COVID, but all these negative statements talking about race and religion being great and so on and so forth. It affects people. So, but coming here, listening to Tansi and all the other good people, especially NGOs, the sacrifices that they are making in terms of getting unity, in terms of unity and integration. Unity has been there. We have been united for a long, long time. It is these people, the few who have come and do negative things that may affect our unity. And as I said, when we hear all this negative stuff, you become depressed and disappointed coming from leaders and people who are, in fact, make decisions. However, I think, as I said, listening to all of you, and also I had the opportunity to talk to. We had a webinar 2 days ago. The title was the democratization of education, and 3 Malay gentlemen, academics, were there, and hearing them, I thought there is future for this country, because they are moderate. They are talking about diversity, that we should celebrate the diversity, and diversity is not a problem, but it's an asset. And even in before 1957, when we got the independence, there was a report called the Result Report. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. And I think that laid the foundation for the structure of our country, our education system. And I like to read that because it's a very important statement. And in this panel, I think two speakers have raised about vernacular school. And some idiots go on talking about it. In fact, you cannot raise this problem of vernacular school because I remember there was a deputy minister in parliament raised about abolition of vernacular school, and he was put to court. He was from Sabah. Therefore, I think what I would like to just read this because it is a celebration of multiculturalism. This is national system of education which would be acceptable to the people of the Federation and satisfy their needs as well as promote their cultural, social, economic, political development as a nation. So that is not only a democratization of education, of course it democratized education because we had 4 medium of schools. And a friend of mine, a colleague of mine at the Faculty of Education, he stated that these are seeds for separatism. And this one provided the pathway for secondary education. Therefore, the students can go from primary education to Form 5. So this is very important, and this is already enshrined in the Constitution. And that is what is important. This Rukunegara, as well as an objective, I agree with Tansi that we focus on this, the recitation of Rukunegara, and forget the objectives of Rukunegara. And the objectives have got And these are just generalities. But all the architects of Rukunegara in the last 1 week or so, they have been interviewing them. They all say equality. Every citizen will be equal. Equality is an important aspect of Rukunegara. And therefore, there's no problem about being celebrating God and all the other things. And the problem now is there is democratization of education. You can go from primary to the higher education without at least Form 5 without examination. Our education system unfortunately has been with exam oriented and very selective. But this has been liberalized and democratized, and therefore it's available to everybody. And Nancy, Emeritus Professor Nancy Oma was talking about on the threats to unity. What can we do about it? And he has given some suggestions, national dialogue and so on. Very important. So the main thing would be, these are fine. The tenets and the objectives are fine. How do we translate this? How do we translate this into values and norms of our kids? The education that we talked about, and I think I was a teacher teaching civics. Now civics, no more civics, it's now moral education. If you can, I believe that we can put all the tenets in terms of values and norms into not only in the subject of moral education and religious education, but across all the subjects. With that sort of thing, I think we'll be able to, they internalize these values and make it in terms of their behavior, so that when they meet the other person of a different race and religion, he has got at least humanity in him, and can be able to contribute to the unity of the country.
Thank you.
I'm taking a lot of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Country.
I want to congratulate all these people who are sacrificing so much to bring about unity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but I was given a note as well. A note to remind to be brief. But thank you very much, Tan Sri. I think your intervention was spot on, and I think the points that you raised, because we tend to have selective memory on certain things, like people tend to intentionally, I would think, forget the Razak report or parts of the Constitution and emphasize other aspects. So we need a full reading of it. Let me just invite the other person who actually was a speaker in my school before, Dato' Daniel Ho. He looks younger than me now. But in case you wanted to say something before I opened it up, I heard you might rush off.
I was just going to rush off. Okay. Just a few quick words. Thanks for all the participation, all the inputs from different ones. It was really very, very helpful indeed. I think a few things that's needed for all of us is to seek to work together towards unity and harmony in our nation. I think Rukunegara is an excellent national ideology, as we all know, so important for all of us. Sadly, what's happening is the politicians who politicize our nation and tearing it apart. It's sad and tragic. It's so sad for our nation. A lot of talk has gone down the drain, as it were, when there is no restraint we put upon some of these people in terms of not only the speeches but also the actions, sometimes tragically, unfortunately. I think what is needed, maybe very quickly, 3 C's that is needed. I think which has been mentioned by some of you, like Amelia as well. I think commitment to our country is very, very important for all of us. A desire to want to see the best in our nation, commitment to contribute to do all that is need to bring our resources, our expertise, our wisdom to the whole thing, which is, I think, so very, very important for all of us. Okay. In fact, for more than 40 years now, every Malaysian I meet around the world, I ask them 2 questions. Firstly, are you Malaysian? Yes, sir. Second question, are you a good Malaysian? Yes, sir, then get home. Okay, not so good one can stay back here. Right? But really, see, more than 40 years I've been chasing Malaysians to come back home to contribute towards nation building, and we need all the good people to be around because of our commitment and love for our nation. There is hope, there is great future for Malaysia. Am I right? That's right. Yeah, we must believe that, because once you don't believe that, right, there is no more hope. We must pick up our bags and leave, isn't it? As some people do, unfortunately. Alright, I've been invited many times to leave the country, offer cushy jobs, high pay, that kind of thing. Forget about it. I'm committed to this land, which is what is needed for all of us. The second seed is in collaboration. We must collaborate across the board, with all ethnic, social, religious groups. I think that's very important. So that in the process, it promotes understanding, appreciation, okay, support, help for one another. Okay, that's very, very important for us. Sadly, we find that we have been pulled into a different cocoons, as it were, into a different ethnic groupings like this, which is not helpful. Even universities where I used to be part of it, teaching there, sadly what happens is that it has broken down into different ethnic groups, okay, and they just have formed their own enclaves and that kind of thing like this. And it really will break that. And this is where lecture professors must set their example, teach, instruct in such a manner that really you see the increasing breakdown of this kind of division that takes place in universities, colleges, and schools across the board, so that we decide to promote greater understanding, appreciation, working together more and more for the good of our nation. I think that's important. We can collaborate over all kinds of activities, I think. Okay, and we continue to work on that. Business, social, and so on and so forth. But last, final seeds that are compassion. See, there are needs around, huge needs around our nation, especially in this COVID-19 experience. As you see across the board, many of us, right, we want the government to extend the lockdown as it were. You see, 10 out of 10 people who are pushing the government to extend the lockdown all belong to the middle class. Now, you and I, if the lockdown were to extend longer, we've got no problems food on our table daily. Am I right? Our friends, there are 6, 7, 8 million people where food on the table daily is an issue. The B14 group, as we all know, below 40% in this country, plus the many migrant workers in this country, plus, can I say, refugees as well. There are hundreds of thousands of refugees, both documented and undocumented. They are also people that we must love and care for. We must show compassion to. So it's very easy to push for increasing lockdown without realizing that many others are suffering. Not only food on the table that is needed for them from day to day, which they are so concerned about, but on top of that, they will pay rentals where they're living. And so, by the way, I also actually lead a church for some 40 years now. And we have served in this period of 3 months of lockdown. We have supported 15,000 people with food. And these are not people from my church. These are just people in the community of all religious, social, ethnic backgrounds. We just reach out to serve. So needs are huge around there. And when we do this together, friends from all ethnic groups, this will bring great unity, great understanding, and great appreciation for one another. Wonderful man. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Daniel and Tan Sri Marimutu for those words. Can I open it up to questions, comments, suggestions, or your views? Briefly, yes. Just state your name. That would be helpful. So.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Priscilla Najo and I'm a Sarawakian. So based on our discussion today, I would like to highlight a few things which is really speak home. And I would like to stir a questions that when we go back to our own place, I would like everyone to think of it. And first one is, before we can implement this, I have a questions because we are trying to carry it and bring it to all Malaysians as a through a technology, through an IT, something like that. I have a question. Does it really involve all Malaysians, not only in urban area but in a rural area? That is the question that we really need to think about before we can say that everyone must come and agree to this, and we must come to a relevant step of it. And this is something that we really need to see if we want to see the fruit of this. A powerful intention, so that everyone can understand the why behind the what, so that they can support it, so that they can really carry it as a culture, carry it as an atmosphere. Because this thing, if we just recite it, yes, we can recite it, but to carry it in our life, in our daily life, that is the challenge there. So that is the first one. How can we involve not only the urban area, but the rural area? And we must remember that the Malaysia is a formation of three entities, which is Peninsular Malaysia, yes, and then Sabah and Sarawak. So this is things that are very fundamental that we often to slip through it. So I would like to raise this again. And the second one is, before we can I would like to answer Encik Jufri just now when he says the challenge for the young generations, that the challenge is to understand them. Yes, we can see that it's a challenge, it's an acknowledgement, and it is a challenge. But answer to that is, how can the young generations can have a hope and belief for the nation, for their land, if they didn't see a very strong, good example, which is by our leader, which is some of us here saying about a politician. So I have an answer to this. To go for this is that we must have a good leader, a godly leader, a very principled leader in the system, in the cabinet and all that, so that only we can implement the culture, a principle, only then we can have, so that the young generation can say, oh, I want to come back to Malaysia after I being equipped outside and being empowered outside. I would like to come back to Malaysia to commit to this nation because I see hope. Because who want to commit to something that didn't see hope in it? No one. So before we can go to a very beautiful objective and all that, we need to see the relevance of it. And everyone, each of us, we need to carry this Rukunegara, not only living in a compartmentalized life. So when we say, oh, I'm going to, now I'm not doing this, I'm not carrying this position now, so I can do this. We can see this in a media social now, where we can see the politician, the leader that the people see being reckless in their, they didn't live this Rukunegara. So this is why the young people didn't see. They didn't see the example, they didn't see the hope in it. So this is a calling and awakening for all of us, not to recite, not to only come out and propose a beautiful paper, but live it. So that is from my perspective. And when they see the intention behind it, they will carry it. You don't have to do anything, they will carry it with you. So I am so happy to see more young people speak their voice. And I really appreciate and I really want to say thank you for all the seniors here, which is very experienced and all that. And you guys come out with a platform like this and hear from us. That is the first step where we can go to the unity, because you carry that. And we must always remember, unity is not a uniformity. Unity is a diversity that come together. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your inspiring words. Can I pass on to Richard? Long time I didn't see you. Oh yes,
No,
that's true.
I just apply.
You want to?
No, I just want to apply principle number 5. Kesopanan dan kesusilaan. I will ask excuse for myself. I need to go home now.
Oh.
No, it's okay.
But actually, you can share something.
No, don't need.
No, please.
No,
No,
actually, I'm here because of last week. I was also asked by RTM and to give an interview on Rukunegara. And the last question was asking me, what will I do as corporate, like what Tan Sri Umar said. So I just want to walk the talk. Then I said that I would like to maybe to set up organization, a tabong, and to work for a lot of NGO that put together. Because to me, maybe before I go, I just want to share what my view on the Rukunegara, what all of us in this room, what can we use the power of Rukunegara? Since you all say it's so beautiful written, and since we all say there's a lot, some even say we are in the darkest moment, say a lot about politicians, but how can all of us, we have academicism here, we got Tan Sri Omar, since I know so a long time, Tan Sri Michael Yeo, and our commentator, Dr. Denison, and we have a lot of you here. How can we use Rukunegara, since we say it's so beautiful written, it's so philosophically written, how can we use Rukunegara to do the best for this country? And my belief is to use Rukunegara to right the wrong. Rukunegara is one of the most powerful tools to right the wrong. That means we make whatever kesalahan jadi kebetulan. But my concept to right the wrong is 2 parts. First part, we must make sure using Rukunegara actually is education. Like a child who take the drugs, if you send him to the rehabilitation center, actually maybe take a lot of effort. But through the Rukunegara, you can use education to wake up their consciousness and they themselves want to right the wrong. And of course, the second part, we meet some of those terrible politicians. We must have a group of people, invite them or write to them. What you do is against the Rukunegara, and those ugly politicians, you must have a very talented people to do a debate, open debate using the social media and shame them. To me, that's why I take all the trouble. I thought I showed somewhere to look for people that I can work together along, and I will give a response to Tan Sri Omar, my old friend. I think we know each other for 30 years, maybe longer. So I will really respond to your call, and of course with Tan Sri Michael, I know long time. And just now when I was here, I was mooted the idea. I think we should start a class, a classroom on the internet to really educate about the Rukunegara. So all this I like to share is, please take my ideas of really using Rukunegara to right the wrongs as the most powerful tool. Thank you.
Very good, Tan Sri. We would have lost all that if you had walked away without talking to us. Thank you, Tan Sri. All the best. I heard you started a Rukunegara garden. Okay, Richard, over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Richard Yeo here. Someone mentioned the appreciation of the seniors in this room. Being a senior as well, with Dr. Denison and Tan Sri Michael. Perhaps the seniors were the problem. Anyway, on a serious note, I think Tan Sri made a remarkable statement to use the Rukunegara to right the wrongs. I think that's something we must follow up on. And I don't think we even need to think in ethnic or religious lines. Righting the wrong is righting the wrongs in society, that has pervaded for years. I think of using Rukunegara to push for a more equitable society. And Sri, I know we have come a long way, but we have also become a much less equitable society in the past 30, 40 years. I think that is a place where we need to right the wrong towards the underprivileged and so on. I meant to take the mic actually to ask a provocative question because we're talking about Rukunegara and national unity and where we are now and so on. I like to think that perhaps we should try and look into what is the cause of our present quagmire, our present, sense of hopelessness that pervasive in our society. Maybe it's divisive policies, maybe it's divisive politicians, I don't know, but it's really worth looking into it. And I'm reminded of this man called Trump, who within 4 years created so much divisiveness in the United States. It's amazing. One man did all that in 4 years. So we need to look at that as well. But my provocative question actually pertains to our ASEAN region. I mean, growing up as a boy, I remember that a lot of countries in this region face such challenges of national unity, of ethnic strife and so on. But looking around now, do we see that in other countries in the region? And if we don't, then we need to ask ourselves, how is it they have moved ahead and we seem to be stuck in time? On the global scale, whether we like it or not, we are perceived to be a racist country, a divided country. That's how people perceive us in survey after survey. Well, I would argue that on the ground, we don't see that we're fine, but the fact that we're perceived like that is good, something that we need to think about. And if you work and live in the Philippines or Thailand, perhaps most countries in ASEAN, ethnicity and religion and discrimination and ethnic strife doesn't really come to mind. I spent many years working in the Philippines. I felt completely at home. The issue of racism or discrimination never arose. Nobody in the Philippines talks about why don't we have national unity. Everyone is the same, and even in South Africa, where I also worked for many years, despite the fact that they're a new nation, they've done very well. So I'd like to know why is it that Malaysia, seems to still be grappling this problem. And let's not look globally, let's just look at ASEAN. Where do we stand in ASEAN vis-a-vis the other countries? And maybe we can do some work in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Sorry I left for a few minutes, but can I pass on the time to someone else? Yes, Lavanya.
Thank you very much, and thank you for organizing this really interesting session. I just had a question actually for Dato' Halimah, because she mentioned she had interviewed the chairman of the drafting committee of the Rukunegara. Unfortunately, she's left out. Maybe Tan Sri Omar, you may be able to assist in answering this question that I have. I'm just wondering, what would the drafters have envisaged for Malaysia 50 years down the line when they were drafting the Rukunegara? And I guess those who are still around, what maybe fundamentally they see has gone wrong or has not actually happened in the way they would have perceived it. And the second thing I just wanted to say is an observation or a comment. I think as a nation, at times when it's really needed, we have come together, we have pulled together, we have shown that unity. And I think our society, in fact, has shown a lot of maturity, despite the political immaturity that we have been faced with. And for example, during this COVID-19 situation, we came together as a nation, we came together, as you have all already mentioned. The crisis seems to be something that actually propels us towards unity. Similarly, when we were trying to work together, people spoke up in the elections to get rid of kleptocracy in 2014. So what I'm trying to say here is, in order for us to really become united, perhaps we need to rally around something that we can all contribute to as a nation. And crisis seems to be something that actually brings us all together. We are looking at things like the crisis that climate change, loss of biodiversity will bring about. So this could actually be something that we can all rally together regardless of what our backgrounds are in terms of race, religion, and so on, and come together as a nation to address these things collectively. So that's just an observation and suggestion that I wanted to put towards the table.
Thank you, Lavanya. Tan Sri, do you want to respond now or later? Later. Can I invite those who are at the back to move up to the table so you don't need to be so far away? You can move up. You can move up, which you can also, if you want, raise a comment or a thought. Who else? Because I'm going to give the panelists a few minutes to respond to any of the questions or comments. Yes, Rato.
It's been very refreshing exchange of ideas. Very summary. Your summary will be good. Leaders of this country. The leaders of this country. Education, civil service, and even police. They are the people who interact with people. They adopt and seriously follow from the top down. You will have a much easier time. Obviously, the way to educate the politicians is very easy. You get all the political leaders, party leaders into a convention. Get the Speaker of the Parliament on another occasion to get the MPs into line. At two levels. The political parties have got political leaders. Get those party leaders to a convention and tell them the people are very. Somebody remarked just now, why in ASEAN? We seem to have problem always like this. So the political leaders always get brought in. And I think Tan Sri Omar has been doing this dialogue, and I think with the help of the Minister of Unity and the Deputy, we may go far in getting this political leadership. To get the MPs, we have a Speaker who may be amenable to do something beyond what is normally done. He has had one bright side and one not so bright side, but he may be amenable. He was formerly the election commissioner. I know him personally at some level. Okay. Now, the other major factor is that our educational hierarchy, the headmasters, because quite a lot of things happen in schools. So that all the headmasters, that's what dialogue I was trying to do. Get together, and this is not something one-off. It has to be once in 3 months, and you must call up the people who fail, the schools that fail, the teachers that fail. And it goes now. Civil servants are another group. There are some civil service departments which are beautiful. They do very well. But equally, there are another group of civil servants who are slow, inefficient, and sometimes selective. So that's another area. So actually, we should go down. Many people have remarked, all of us have no problem. I mean, I've been in academia for 40 over years. So we have no problem. I teach everybody. Everybody, no problem in the university. I think the problem is the leaders. Why is it so? Because the political parties are founded on religion, founded on race, founded on socialism sometimes, and various isms. I think we should try to just, sort of get this a little bit off. So they're challenging that they have the mantle of leadership by religion or by race or by something else, protecting language, things like that. So that has to be taken off. No, because politics is to do with people, not with all these isms. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think maybe in that light, I want to raise a question to the younger panelists who are around. This is the toughest point that was mentioned, that the whole narrative of politics is based on race and religion. You're not going to let it go because it survives on it. The PH government fell on the ground of race and religion. But the government that took over on the grounds that one particular race was being neglected, now then promotes multiculturalism as its key value. And so you're faced with this reality of the politics of it, that politicians use race to destabilize, capture power, and then in power they try to consolidate and build. So that's something you want to look at. So whether it is children or whether it is teachers, whether it's community leaders, I think all that you can do well. But how are we going to build the cat? That's the politician that's built on. So that's something you want to think of, unless you're going to groom a younger politician from MBM. And then actually, Justri didn't say, I think all the MBM presidents become either MPs or ministers in due time. If you look at the background, so it's a comment. Any other points? If not, we can pass to the panelists to respond, and I will. Anyone else likes to say something, Dr. Lin, or okay, and then pass on. Tan Sri, do you want to make a comment first? I think there was a question specific to you just now.
I didn't quite get the question.
I think the question was the framers of Rukunegara, because Dato' Halima made reference. What were their intention when they framed the Rukunegara? And in that, did they have a dream and vision for what did they envisage in the words? And it's just getting a background of who these founders were and what were their aspirations for the country in that light.
I cannot say that I know, because to me, I only remember Rukunegara as one word. And then when it became two, to me that is a sin. It is to me as bad as flying the yellow governor upside down. In this paper, that's what I said. So, because we do not care about things, how things started originally, that led us to ignoring some of the major thing about Rukunegara. That's the point I was trying to make in this paper, which is in your program. But I will pick up from what you are saying. Rukunegara and COVID. You see what COVID has done. Actually, COVID revived our reaction or our response, which is in line with Rukunegara. If you take greater unity, the first objective of Rukunegara is greater unity of our people. Actually, we act in unison to protect the nation in response to COVID. We came together to do that. And then the second objective of Rukunegara was democratic way of life. Every day the government engaged all stakeholders in many dialogue sessions in what needs to be done to keep the country safe, keep the economy moving, saving jobs, saving life. Every day the nation is updated on everything, facts, rumors, issues, problems. The people is being kept aware of the development. That was sort of bringing people together. And then the third objective was equitable sharing of prosperity. Actually, everyone came together to that actually. Every single Malaysia fly back, quarantine done, provide the moratorium, and then using nation total equity to protect its people. So that was part of the sharing that we have done too. Liberal approach. We are open to all ideas, to approaches. We utilize everything that could be offered by the people for the people when we were threatened by COVID. Progressive society, or rather harnessing science, modern science and technology. We rely upon our professional to lead. We utilize all kind of, rather we listen to our scientists rather than to quacks, whatever it is. That's not like Mr. Trump in the other part of the world. So actually, COVID brought us, we came together in line with the 5 objectives of Rukunegara. But what this says that when we have a common enemy, we came together. But we cannot continue to be doing this. We have to come together even when we don't have a national disaster. This is the point I think that we need to find out. So in the past, we have done that too. Now, because of COVID, we have come together. We need to find another formula to come together even if we are not. That isn't a big
Thank you, Tan Sri. I think this will be an ongoing task for us to discover the pioneers of the Rukunegara. But definitely, as Tan Sri points out, I think the 5 cita-cita or ambitions are actually very reflective and long-term in its thinking, and also the principles as well. So there was a lot of foresight in the leaders who helped build the nation. And so I think it's then the younger people's role now to help translate this into ways that it will be protected, not just for recital, but for life, and then stop those who try to destroy this or divert from this attention. So I think let me, I'm told that YB Atta is already here, so we will take a few minutes of intervention. If I can start with Debbie first. If you, from the conversation, your parting point or thought that you like to make, if the mic could be passed on, or Patrick, if you can pass that. Okay. Okay, Debbie, over to you.
I thought I would address, there was a question on political, can there be change if there is no political will, right, to change? I do believe that, yes, for real change, we need reform, and of course, we need to have that political will as well to want to change. And it is our hope that, in whatever it is that we do, perhaps we may inspire or influence some youths that we come across along our way who may then expound those values which we feel are the foundational values, unity, strength in diversity. I mean, I recite it like as if it's, like a recital, but it's not, right? These are the elements for a progressive society. And if, in the course of what we do, if only a handful are inspired and they become leaders, then maybe, that's our hope. And I feel that, our generation, okay, I may look young because Dr. Dennison keeps saying the young people and then he looks at me. But actually I'm almost half a century old. But our generation, I think, has probably messed things up. And I feel that, when I was young, I had friends of all races. I didn't even think of them in terms of race. But I think we've messed things up, and our hope is in the future generation, right? And those leaders who come up and maybe MPM, leaders who then expound those values that will bring our country forward. The other thing that I'm quite passionate about is democratic empowerment, which is, something that Undi 18, I keep mentioning them because I really admire what they do. And I think that is also something that we would like to support, democratic empowerment, because that too can, get youths to reflect on what are who it is that are expounding those values that they should vote for. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Faye, can I pass to you?
Another young person, Dr. Dennis. Sorry, what was the question that you want to? It's just a general.
No, it's just your comment, listening to all the thoughts. Your parting words to us in this RTM, in this roundtable.
Yeah. So initially, even hearing Priscilla or many others also who are always pointing at, not pointing, sorry, but bringing up about changing the politicians. One thing I've learned in my journey is you can never change people. There's no point. I come from a creative background. So my journey during this journey of Rojak Project was to figure out ways, a creative way, to bridge the gap. How do I show, because I know anybody can talk about unity, anybody. But how do I visually show? And that's what Rojak Project has been trying to do. How do I show people and touch their hearts, in that way? Because I cannot rely all the time with the elders, but we need them. We need their wisdom. We need their knowledge to back us up as well. And what I can share is that under Rojak Project, we will be preparing a new journey on bridging the gap. And it's going to be exciting and scary because when you meet new people, it can shock your system as well. Something new that you've never seen before, which we did when we went around Malaysia. And since we talk about being involved, before, I like to show before saying things. I like to show the product. And Rojak Project is going to find out ways, and we're going to meet all these 250, play one major part to meet all these 250 unheard Malaysians. And we're going to do our part to bring voices. The fact that I have a fellow Penang here, to me, is remarkable. When I went to Sarawak, they were the hardest people to find. I went to a program this year, learning about leadership and healing and all these kind of things. And she came up to me and said, "Are you Fei Lin from the Rojak Project?" And I said, "Yeah." "How did you know?" "I heard what you did. And I just want to say thank you for doing what you did." Sometimes Instead of always pointing at the leaders, politicians, I don't bother wasting time. Time is too precious. I got only one life to make it count for this journey for all of us. And of course, I do hope we have collaborators in time to participate on a new great history where we can truly bridge the gap. I no longer like to always participate in conversations, not because it's not right, but I like to test and experiment and find out ways. And even if I make mistakes, always the aunties and uncles will always forgive me because I already bring it up. Until if I get anything wrong, I'm so sorry. Yeah? You just teach me. It's okay. I'm willing. I'm humble.
Thank you.
Teach me. So that's all I can say.
Thank you, Faith. Sorry to cut you. Inspiring, just Fitri. Few minutes because we have only 5 minutes left.
Just 10 minutes, thank you very much. In fact, I'm the non-partisan president, first non-partisan president of Malaysian Council. Thank you very much. I agree that young people want to see hope in Malaysia, but we have to remember that young people themselves are the hope. So that's why we heard from there are several movements from our young people nowadays, including side study to form a new party for young people. It must be based, of course, on values, Rukunegara, and so on, but they try to provide fresh leadership in parliament. And within Malaysian Youth Council, also there is a movement among the young leaders in Malaysian Youth Council to form, to offer a new party for Malaysia to ensure that we will send our young people into parliament with the fresh ideas, uphold the Rukunegara constitution and so on. And in fact, Malaysian Youth Council, we try to promote a Not Too Young to Run campaign organized by United Nations to ensure that there are more young people in the legislative council. So they will bring about the fresh ideas to fight for Rukunegara constitution and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Just Fitri, and all the best to MBN in your efforts. Emily, yourself.
I'm just going to keep it very short. But again, it was very refreshing to hear so many different ideas being brought to the table today. I think that, like everyone did mention that, it's imperative for the young people to stand up and be the change that we want to see in our nation. So I think it has given me a lot of hope to see that we are all aligned with this purpose for a better Malaysia, and no matter what our political stance is, no matter what our race or culture is, we are all united in our need and want to see Malaysia be the best country that it can be and not lose out to our ASEAN counterparts or whoever else it is. We will be the best that we can through our unity and also through all our individual efforts. So yes, thank you everyone.
Thank you. Over to you.
I prefer not to divide between the young people. I know there has been a lot of emphasis about we have to educate the young, but I think we have a lot to learn from the old generation as well. So I think the best model for me, it should be just now Faye mentioned that we have to lose hope to the politicians. I do not lose hope to the politicians. Instead, I think the politicians should be school as well. So there is a model in the Myanmar School of Politics. Actually, the politicians go to schools. I mean, in the terms of that, they learn the concepts of democracies and principles and so forth. So I think we are equal in that sense. So I think when we say about equality, I think whether the old or the young, we should be treated the same and not to put all the burdens onto the young that only the young generation needs to learn. But I think the old and the young should learn together because we can give and take towards each other and learn from each other. I think that's a model that I would like to advocate instead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the panelists. I think we have had a very fruitful discussion and also the feedback from participants around the table. Many thoughts, many ideas from what to do with young people, education, what to do with politicians. I think YB Akhtar is here. Many of us worked very closely with his dad before. We are still around. Working as well on this area. Let me just conclude with 3 simple points that I heard from you all. Firstly, role models. I think what you all were saying is that role models are very critical. And some of you in your organizations are giving very effective role models, whether you're going into Sarawak, working with a community, identifying them, and so forth. So I think that's very key. The second point is, I think we really need to feel for another community. I think Faye mentioned she went into the Penang community to feel. And likewise for us, from any one of our communities, very often we take a very victim sort of disadvantaged position. But in actuality, we should feel whether it's the majority community, another community, why are they feeling like that? And how do we sort of assure them or get to the grassroots? And I myself was pleasantly surprised, as I mentioned, going to a kampong, sitting down, having durians with them. Of course, I'm not saying the nice things because they gave me durian, but really, it was another side of seeing a community that you felt you feel differently. Let me close with a thought that I read about from Nelson Mandela. He said, hate is not intrinsic to the human being, that a child is taught to hate. And if they are taught to hate, then they can be taught to love as well. So likewise, I think, while a lot of suggestions came from the early stage, but I think it's important for us to journey in this process. And this is a key platform and area, and I think we need to continue the discussion. And I would encourage the organizations that have spoken up today, whether it is Dialogue, Dialogue Riot, or any one of the groups, continue your good work and let's try and pool the resources and build a better Malaysia for all Malaysians and anyone who is on the land. Over to you, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dennison. Without further ado, since the YB Arthur is here, allow us to have the pleasure of his giving us a few words. When I invited him for this roundtable, I had specifically asked him to share his views, unity from a Sabah's perspective. Thank you.
Tan Sri Michael Yeo, President KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific, Chairman of PROHAM. Tan Sri Dr. Omar Abdul Rahman, former Science Advisor to Prime Minister, founding President and Senior Fellow of Academy of Sciences Malaysia, Distinguished Senior Fellow of KSI, Datu Dr. Dennison Jayasuriya, Co-Chair of the CSO SCG Alliance, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me for doing the closing today. I'm actually very honored that I was invited here not only as a Sabahan, but also someone who's also shared some experiences here with you as well. I've been actively involved as well with the question of what is national unity. And I believe you've spent quite an amount of time today discussing the very simple question, what is national unity? But then you understand the complexity that actually comes with how that question is asked. So that question will usually generate many opinions as it means different things to different people. And that's what you've been spending the entire afternoon doing today. However, if we look at history, one thing that we can say for certain is that there will always be differences of opinions. There has never been a time when there has been absolute consensus, because national unity is impossible if we define it as an agreement between all citizens. Professor Amitai Etzion, an American sociologist, defines national unity as solidarity within citizens of a nation with minimal sectorial practices and close adherence to law and order. However, it does not imply homogeneity. I hope I pronounced that right. Homogeneity. Rather, it advocates a community of communities which respects diversity and share values, experiences with geographical relativity. National unity in the form of racial and religious tolerance is an incremental prerequisite to societal peace. Our founding father rightly put it when he said that every one of us must respect each other's rights and feelings and be tolerant of each other's religions, customs, and habits. Hence, it would be appropriate to say that in our context, national unity is a process which seeks to unite people of different ethnic, culture, religious, and socio-economic backgrounds for reciprocally beneficial objectives. And this process started with the formulation of the principles of Rukunegara by the National Consultative Council headed by our second Prime Minister, proclaimed 50 years ago on the 31st of August 1970, where Tun Abdul Razak put it aptly by saying the future of our country depends on one important thing, and that is the unity of our people and various races. So what makes this country truly beautiful? It's not only the spectacular landscape, it's not only the undulating tropical rainforests or the various food and music or culture that we have. It's not just the richness of our culture, it's also the diversity of our ethnicities and religions. Our secret, and it should remain the mantra for generations to come, is respect, safety, and dignity for all. And that helps to remind us how important tolerance, inclusivity, dignity, and respect is for lasting peace and prosperity. Tolerance is also implicit in the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs, which have been endorsed by all 193 United Nations member states in 2015, including Malaysia. With the ultimate aim of the SDG goals is to ensure that no one is left behind and to work towards a world that is just, inclusive, and equal. So throughout the SDGs, we see that building peaceful and inclusive societies is the bedrock of sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia hosted UN Special Rapporteur on Cultural Rights in 2017, Ms. Karima Benoni. I hope I pronounced that right. In her concluding remarks, she acknowledged that Malaysia's good efforts in building a society inclusive of its broad cultural diversity. And she also stressed the need for Malaysia to protect its tradition of tolerance. However, tolerance amongst us is much underrated today, especially among the young people, where shaping their minds with the correct values and principles is in fact critical in order for us to foster mutual understanding for the prevention of social conflict. History has also taught us the risk of intolerance and exclusivity is too high a price to pay for any society or nation. Some quarters would ask that when we talk of tolerance, we are talking of assimilation, in which we refer to the majority race forcing the minority to adopt and follow their way of life. Some people would also argue that we have failed to uphold the Rukunegara because we still identify ourselves by race and ethnicity. However, I would like to state here that our country does not practice assimilation. we are proud of our diversity and we strive to achieve equity so we can live in harmony. As we progress as a nation, we will be required to constantly manage both social and economic demands, as one cannot be achieved without the other. However, our economic achievements so far may provide a measurable insight into our success so far. The Malaysian economy has enjoyed an average GDP growth of 6.2% per annum since 1970, which is amongst the highest in the world. We rank 25th out of 140 nations in the 2018 Global Competitive Report. Our 5-year plans are also designed to focus on wide and holistic aspects of our growth, such as infrastructure, social, and well-being. And the 2018 National Unity Index still concludes a positive and high level of national unity in our country. Yesterday, our nation celebrated its National Day. 63 for West Malaysia, 57 for Sabah and Sarawak. Many people forget that. And in 2 weeks, we will be celebrating Malaysia Day. We have learned and gone through so much together over the years, and we realize that as a multicultural, multiracial, and multi-religious country, moderation is the key to maintaining peace, unity, and social stability. Hence, I'm proud to say that in Sabah and also Sarawak, it has been our way of life. For example, the Kadazan Dusuns in Ranau, Sabah, many of us in our households have Muslim and Christian family members living under the same roof. But practicing one's belief is never an issue, as we tolerate and respect each other. But even more than that, we celebrate and embrace our diversity. More cultures mean more celebrations, which also means more food and more public holidays. So what's so bad about that? This is the same for the Malanao in Sarawak, where it's also very common to find households with siblings who are Muslims and Christians too. We have Chinese restaurants and coffee shops in states where the patrons also come from all walks of life. During Christmas celebrations and also Ramadan, Muslim and Christians will come together for festive gatherings. The church will prepare halal food for their Muslim friends. We have different houses of worship built next to each other. And on Fridays, churches will open its gates to allow Muslims to park their vehicles during prayer time, while on Sundays, the mosque will reciprocate by opening its gate to allow churchgoers to use its car park. These are little yet significant examples that we are a successful and multi-ethnic and multi-religious nation living in peace and harmony. I often get asked the question, how come it's so easily done in Sabah and Sarawak? And people usually compare that. So in my personal opinion, I think we would have to look at our history. When Malaysia, or rather Tanah Melayu, was first gained independence back in 1957, one of the conditions for, at that time, the Chinese and the Indians to become citizens of Malaysia was that they would have to have accepted the social contract. So the idea of a social contract and ethnic rights have been ingrained in the citizens in West Malaysia. But for Sabah and Sarawak, the idea or even the question of a social contract never came up when we became independent. So I suppose that's why our children have been raised differently, without the idea of a social contract. When we come here and we find things like social contract or even housing discounts, for example, for certain groups, we find that quite foreign to us, because in Sabah and also Sarawak, we would never ask, is there a discount for a certain segment of society? So I suppose it's been how we've been brought up, and we have to go back to history. Perhaps that's the way we gained independence, That was the question that we were asked when we provided citizenship at that time. And therefore, probably would have to have a change of mindset that it's a part of our history, but then let's move on from that. Because now we should move on as one united nation. Therefore, ladies and also gentlemen, our nation's economic and social unity is interdependent on each other. You cannot be successful in one without the other. And our economic success so far is evident of our success in managing social relations and vice versa. So ladies and gentlemen, 6 decades have passed, and the words of our father of independence during the proclamation of independence rings just as true today as it did all those years ago. That we are masters of our own destiny, and that the welfare of this beloved land is our own responsibility. Just as Malaysia's independence was proudly achieved not through violence or blitzspill, our management of unity happens not through force and threats of nationalization, but instead through skillful policy planning and execution underpinned by a sheer determination. We must always remind ourselves that unity is to be preserved and cherished, that we must continuously remind ourselves that unity is not a derivative of, here comes the word again, homogeneity, or that social cohesion can only exist in a single race, single religion or community. National unity recognizes and celebrates the diversity of all Malaysians and encourages us to celebrate it and look forward. It is for this reason that I applaud the initiative taken today at today's roundtable on the Rukunegara that focuses on the common good for all Malaysians, and I thank you sincerely for inviting me to do the closing. This seeks to inspire positivity and pride in our country. This is especially important as the naysayers are many and relentless in their effort to undermine this nation in every way they can. More so these days when we ask for more freedom, where social media and keyboard warriors now have wide-ranging freedom in what they share and viral, and thus it becomes our own responsibility to exercise that freedom responsibly. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I am confident that Malaysia can and will continue to grow to be a peaceful and prosperous nation. The future is in our hands, and especially in the hands of the young. With that, I officially close this roundtable of Rukunegara. Thank you, and may God bless Malaysia.
Thank you, Ivy Arthur, for his enlightening speech. We hope that much can be learned of the East Malaysia, and we need to do a lot more work to be done. Without further ado, as a token of our appreciation to Ivy, kindly accept the token from us.